Hello, I am here with Lila today, and I want to share with you why me and my wife are so glad that we picked Japan for our first overseas trip with our baby. Now, little Lila is 9.5-ish months old, and so we were a little bit nervous taking her overseas for the first time. It's about a 10-hour flight from Sydney to Osaka in Japan. But I will tell you that after coming back from that trip, we were so glad we chose Japan, and I'm gonna share with you 5 reasons why. Now, the first is that the people of Japan were absolutely so lovely to our baby daughter. We encountered so many different moments where we'd be holding Lila in public, on the subway, just walking around, or whether or not she'd be in the pram or on our carrier. People would see her. We noticed this every single time. Whenever some people saw her, especially older Japanese women, and also younger Japanese women, they'd always smile at her and even interact with her. They'd make funny faces. They'd try to make her laugh. And so many times people would just come up to us and be like, "Oh my God, she's so kawaii," and we'd be like, "Oh, that's so nice." And it was just such a lovely thing because, when you're traveling overseas with a baby for the first time, there are a lot of things that worry you, and when you encounter moments like that, when people generally, like the public that are from the country that you're visiting, when they're really warm towards your baby, you feel really good and you feel much more at ease, and it just helps you have a much better time. So, there was one particular scenario where we were on a subway and there was this lady sitting next to us, and she was just interacting with Lila so much. So we thought, hey, why not let her hold our baby? And look, we wouldn't normally do this, but she was just so lovely to us. So we thought, okay, would you like to hold our baby? And she was so happy to, and she held her and she played with her. And, it was just such a wonderful interaction to watch. I think the warmth we felt just made us feel a lot of trust for the country that we were traveling in. And, I don't know if we'd have the same experience elsewhere. Maybe we would, maybe we wouldn't, but that was our experience in Japan. The next reason we felt super good about picking Japan for our first overseas trip with our baby was that we just felt safe throughout our trip. We felt really, really safe. There was just something about the country, the different cities that we were staying at that made us feel comfortable taking little Lila out later at night after 8-9 p.m, walking through the streets, walking through quiet streets. I can confidently say I wouldn't feel the same doing this in many other countries around the world. But it enabled us to also be more flexible. Because if you think about it, if your baby's having a bad mood during the day, throws a little tantrum, or if something just happens and you can't do as much as you want during the day, well, if you feel safe in the city that you're at, you feel really, really safe taking your child out. Well, that gives you the flexibility to do things out at night as well. And that is especially useful if the place you're in has a really good nightlife, if restaurants are open till late. So it basically enable us to walk around shops, walk around eateries, fun places like Dotonbori late at night. I thought it'd be interesting to do some research around this as well, to see what kind of stats Japan has compared to other countries with regards to safety. And something that I found that was really interesting is that when it comes to homicide rates, Japan has a homicide rate of 0.2 people per 100,000. I think that means that per 100,000 people, 0.2 people die as a result of a murder. Whereas in the US, that rate is 5 people per 100,000, which is a crazy difference. That's about 25 times difference. If I just calculate right over my head, 5 divided by 0.2. Yeah, that's a 25 times higher homicide rate in the US compared to Japan, which is a very considerable difference. I guess at a relative level, not at an absolute level. Japan also has a relatively low robbery rate compared to other famous countries. Its robbery rate is 1.2 per 100,000 people. Compare that to the UK, that has a rate of 118 per 100,000 people. That's over 100 times increase compared to, well, in the UK compared to Japan. So these stats, obviously we didn't know them, we weren't thinking about them before we flew to Japan, but these stats kind of support the fact, or support the reason why you just feel safer in Japan. You just walk around the environment around you and you just feel less at risk, I guess. The next huge reason why we were glad that we picked Japan as our first overseas country to travel to with our baby was the connectivity. I think Japan has this rep worldwide for having a world-class public transport system, the subway, the underground trains, the high-speed bullet trains, the buses and all that. But yeah, it's mainly the trains. Look, one thing we realized when we got there was that everything is just so clearly marked. Like when you're traveling with a baby, you know, you are already at a baseline kind of stress level. You know, you're already quite stressed, you're quite anxious about getting from A to B, making sure you get there with your baby very safely. So what you want is, or what you would want is for the way in which you get from A to B to feel very easy, because you're in a foreign country, you don't want to get lost. Obviously you'll probably be using apps like Google Maps, and you want to be able to connect what you see in Google Maps to what you're interacting with in real life, and that was something that was done very well, that we found in our experience. Because, for example, we would use Google Maps to basically say we want to get from this place to this place, and the Google Maps would tell us, okay, you got to walk to this station, you got to enter that station through this particular entrance, and then when you enter that station, make sure you catch a train on this line, right? And then Google Maps will show the color of the line, and then you will also see when you're at the station that that particular train line is marked with the same color. And then when you go through the gates towards that train line, Google Maps also tells you which platform and which direction to head in on that line, and then you can easily find that when you're there. Because in Japanese train stations, it's like they predicted ahead of time that they would get so many tourists, so they just made sure everything was marked extremely well. One thing I found even more cool was that on Google Maps, it also tells you which particular exit you should take to get to your destination most optimally. And then when you arrive at a particular station, it marks for you exactly all the different types of exits, or all the different exits, and they're all numbered from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You just need to walk to that particular exit because you're going to see those numbers marked. Another important thing when it comes to connectivity when you're traveling with a baby is the ease of finding lifts and having access to lifts. Because obviously you're going to be sometimes carrying suitcases, sometimes more than one. You might be pushing a pram at the same time, carrying bags, and taking all that with you through an escalator, or to use an escalator may be very tough and a little bit dangerous. So you want to be able to find lifts. So the first thing I'll say is that in our experience, there were lifts almost everywhere. Not everywhere, but almost everywhere. I would say like 95% of cases. There were some entrances to stations where we couldn't find a lift, but I'm sure if we kept walking around, we would have found one. But so the first good thing about Japan is that, you know, there were lifts almost everywhere. And the second awesome thing is that when you use an app like Google Maps, you can find those lifts, because all you need to do is put this setting on Google Maps where it's like an accessibility thing that you want to avoid stairs, and it shows you on maps how to get to a location using only pathways that have access to lifts. So that was a really, really good thing. The next reason we were really glad that we went to Japan for our first overseas trip was because the country in its entirety that we experienced is so clean. The different cities we went to, Kanazawa, Kyoto, and Osaka, roads, public transport, trains, stations, bathrooms, everything we came across was super clean. We rarely ever found litter around, rubbish around, and that little thing just made us feel so much better about traveling with a baby. And I know it might not seem very helpful to be in a clean place when it comes to, you know, traveling with a baby, because obviously your baby's not going to be crawling around the floors or around the streets or anything, but it just makes you feel good knowing that you're in a clean place. I got a little bit curious about why it was that Japan was so clean, and also why it was that there was no rubbish bins around. And I found out that it was either in 1985 or 1995 that there was a terrorist attack in Tokyo where this group or cult hid sarin gas, which is a toxic chemical gas that can cause a lot of harm to people and kill them. They hid them in bins and eventually released the gas in subways during morning rush hour. And I don't think it was an extreme amount of people that died. I think it was less than 100, but a lot of people were also badly injured. And basically, it turns out that that particular incident is one of the key reasons that led Japan to basically phase out bins from being very well spread out throughout the country. You can still find bins, but just nothing compared to like a country like Australia. You just won't find public rubbish bins in many places. The other side to the story is also the fact that Japan has a very strong culture of taking your rubbish with you. If you were to buy some food out and then eat it when you're outside, the expectation is that you would take that rubbish with you as well. So maybe it's just a normal thing for people to carry a rubbish bag with them, But yeah, those were some really interesting things that I learned about cleanliness in Japan and why it's so clean. And I think it was just something that we really appreciated when traveling with a baby. And of course, it also made it it kind of changed how we approached our trip, because we also had to make sure that we carried rubbish bags with us. And luckily we always did, because we had nappy bags with us. So if we had rubbish, we could put it in there too. The last thing we were really glad about with going to Japan was the parental toiletry amenities. That's a weird way to describe it. But basically baby change rooms and breastfeeding rooms. They were pretty much everywhere, every station, every interesting place we went to. It was never too hard to find these rooms. And not only that, these rooms were typically, what we found in our experience was that they were, I guess, built to a very high standard. They were very clean. They also had some interesting gadgets that we found, like these little bin things that, like, you put the rubbish in and like it squeezes the rubbish through the bin and just gets rid of it. If I have a video of it, I'll link it, or I'll include it in this video. But yeah, the ease of finding parental rooms was very, very helpful, and we were glad that we came across them. So those were 5 reasons we were really glad we traveled to Japan for our first trip with our baby. I think it is important to pick your first trip at a place where you can feel confident. These things like safety, ease of travel, being around a welcoming community. I think it's important that all of these things are at a baseline, at a very good level, because if your first trip doesn't go too well, I feel like it can leave a bit of a sour, traumatizing taste in your mouth and sway you away from traveling with a baby again. So a country like Japan is an excellent choice, and I'm sure that there are many other countries like Japan out there that can be a perfect first trip. I think if it costs a little bit more to give you convenience and to give you ease, it's worth paying for that, because you're not going to travel often with your baby properly and probably, and you know, you want to make sure that you have a good time. And those little things that I mentioned, those 5 things, do add up, and they make an impact on your ability to have a good time with your family. So yeah, that's it. I hope you found this information insightful, and I hope that you pick Japan for your first trip with your baby, because you definitely won't regret it.